Cathal Berry is my name. I spent 23 years in the Defence Forces and I'm here in Newbridge here today. My constituency office is a TD and I'm just giving my story for the Kildare Oral History report. So I guess my background is very simple, very straightforward. I spent my first 18 years of my life growing up in a farm in County Waterford. Then I joined the Defence Forces in 1995 at the age of 18. Arrived here in the Curragh in Kildare and I've pretty much been here ever since. I guess the key question is, why would I have joined the Defence Force in the first place? And to me it was a very simple, straightforward decision really. I probably wanted to join the Defence Forces for as long as I remember, maybe since I was 5 or 6. My mum was from Kilworth in County Cork, which is a large training area in County Cork. So my grandparents are from there as well. I spent a lot of time in Kilworth. I went to secondary school in Fermoy in County Cork as well, and that's used to be a garrison town. Fitzgerald Camp in Fermoy was there, so there was always armoured vehicles, there was always artillery being fired or mortars being fired up in the Kildare mountains, and there's always soldiers walking on, so there was soldiers everywhere. My grandfather served in the Reserve Defence Forces and in the local defence force during the emergency as well. So as I was growing up, he was always regaling us with stories about the military and his time in the military and World War II, and so it kind of piques your interest. There was certainly nobody in my family, my immediate family at least, in the Defence Forces, but so for me I just said I'd give it a go. What really attracted me to the organisation, I think, was I guess really a sense of adventure, really important. So I mean, I've never had a 9-to-5 job in my life. My current job is certainly not 9-to-5 either. And 9-to-5 to me is very boring. Secondly, I like the outdoor life. I grew up on a farm, so to me the connection with the community, connection with the environment, really important. I love sport. I love physical fitness, and yeah, I guess they're probably the main reasons. But I think the real big standout one is teamwork. The Defence Force is all about teamwork. If you can't function as a team, you can't function full stop. Nobody ever gets through life on their own. And the emphasis from day one in the Cadet School where I started was all about teamwork, absolutely. I think there's two big lessons from when you arrive in 1995 as part of a 21-month course. It's number one, it's about leadership, and number two, it's about teamwork. So again, why did I apply to become a cadet? I didn't really know much about what it meant to be a cadet or an officer. All I knew was that the cadetship was the toughest diploma in Ireland, and it still is. So again, if you want to challenge yourself, do the toughest course in the country, and why not? So there was 22 Army cadets, and there was 10 Zambian cadets actually in my cadet class, and we were put through the ringer for a 21-month course in the Curragh, which is fantastic training. Again, full emphasis on leadership, full emphasis on teamwork from day one, but also education. And I think that's what really stands out for the Defence Forces. They are obsessed with education. And when I say obsessed, I mean it in a good way. And the theory is very, very progressive in that they recognise that the Defence Forces is one of the smallest militaries in the world. So they say that, look, if we only have 9,500 people in the Defence Forces, we must make sure that every one of our soldiers is at least 3 times as good as any potential adversary. So that's the real force multiplier, and education really is an empowerment factor there. So it's about basically leveraging every Irish soldier, sailor or flight crew, that they can add value and bring key core skills to the table that no other nationality can do. So I spent 21 months in the Cadet School. I was commissioned up to Dublin then in the 5th Battalion, and went to Galway, did a science degree there. Again, the military funded it, which is fantastic, and I'd spent 12 years in the military afterwards. That's part of the kickback, which is entirely understandable. Then started going overseas, and really from an overseas perspective, that's where you really cut your teeth over there. So I was all over the Balkans, the Middle East, Africa. Went on and joined the Ranger Wing then. There's a selection course, a 3-week selection course for the Irish Special Forces. So I think maybe 70 or 80 of us started, and about 9 of us were left standing at the end. And that was excellent. So I passed the course, got to spend 6 years in the Ranger Wing then as well. I guess the highlight of that was actually just leading a group of 52 soldiers in the desert in Chad in 2008. That was a real groundbreaking experience for me. Some of the stories were fantastic. The task was very straightforward. We were told basically there was an issue with Darfurian refugees at the time. So Darfur is a province in Sudan, and there was a lot of refugees there, and they were streaming across the border for protection into Chad. So our job was to go right up to the Sudanese Chadian border and patrol it, and basically deter attacks from Janjaweed militia that were coming across the border and attacking the refugees and stealing their meagre possessions. So that was really, really excellent. We were there for 4 months, living in the desert, really, really exposed, really, really vulnerable. And that's the other thing about the Irish military. Always outgunned, always outnumbered, but never outperformed and never outfoxed. And that's really the mantra we live by, that you might be small in number, but you're absolutely ferocious in capacity. I remember the first week we were there, we were obviously completely armed to the teeth. So we said we'd do a firepower demonstration for some of the local militias and their local police and the local military first. So we just drove up all our gunships, all our cars, and we just asked the local police commissioner and the local military commander, just pick a target on the mountain there, and he did, and they did. And we just completely wiped out the target. And I remember the commissioner actually just whispering in my ear afterwards. He had a small bit of English, very small. He just said, "You guys, after what I've seen, you'll have no trouble from the rebels. You'll have no trouble from the militias. They won't take you guys on. They'll just wait for another nationality to come down the road and take them on instead." So it goes back really to the Irish military's culture, that it's a very composed and professional culture, and we'd only use, I guess, lethal force only when you really, really have to. And the key requirement is that you should never have to use lethal force, because if you deploy with a very professional and very acceptable posture, nobody will take you on. They'll just go, "Don't mess with these guys, we're going to come out second best." And that's why that we've had very few engagements overseas. When I say engagements, I mean firefights with local militia and stuff. They kind of look at us and go, "Actually, guys, I don't fancy my chances there. We'll just wait for a different nationality to come down the road tomorrow or next week instead." So how would I sum up my military career, the 23 years of it? Just one big adventure, absolutely. And I don't feel like that adventure is over yet. I've become a public representative, I would say, temporarily. My full intention is to return to the Defence Force. I can rejoin up to the age of 50 as a medical doctor. That's what I intend to do once this current, I suppose, phase is completed, and we're getting a lot of success from that perspective. So I suppose I'll just go back a small bit. And so, yes, the military did send me to Galway to do a science degree, which is fantastic. And then part-time I did a diploma in French, did a master's in law. But in the range when we couldn't get a doctor to pass the selection course. It's tough enough for even a professional soldier who joins with 5 years experience under their belt to actually pass. So we needed a doctor, and in Chad it was obvious that there was a deficiency there from a medical perspective, that if we did get involved in a mine strike or an IED going off next to one of our vehicles, we would have been, I would say, unnecessarily vulnerable. And yes, the guys were great and it was fantastic, but I thought we were running an unnecessary risk there. So another big part of the Irish military's culture is that you take action, and if you see a problem, you try and fix the problem. We don't just talk about it, we just say, "Look, we need a doctor in this unit." So I went back and I repeated my leaving cert, did it part-time in 2009, got the points for medicine, got offered a place in the College of Surgeons in Dublin, took a career break, took some unpaid leave, finished my training in the College of Surgeons, then did a lot of work in the public hospitals here in Ireland, and then returned to the Defence Forces into the Medical Corps, which was great. So I thought initially I would return to the range as the medical officer, the doctor down there, but there was another appointment which was far more influential and we could help the unit along much better, and that was actually commanding officer or a school commandant of the medical school. And that was a brilliant job. You're responsible for all medical training in the Defence Forces, basically, national and international. So all the EMT training, and EMT is medical, emergency medical technician, all the paramedic training, the advanced paramedic training for nurses, training for doctors. And we really brought in a lot of good projects there, but it was really in my role as a medical officer, I really came face to face with the pay and conditions issue. A lot of troops were coming in and they literally couldn't afford to come into work the following day because they were commuting up to about 100 kilometres because their local barracks had closed and they were now moved to new barracks. Their house was in negative equity in their original town, so they couldn't move house. And you were just face to face with this huge pay and conditions problem. And the biggest travesty about the problem was it's so fixable, so eminently fixable. All you had to do was make a few minor adjustments and everything would sort itself out downstream. So when you're in the military in uniform, there's only so much you can say. You're meant to be very loyal and very obedient, and you can be very easily dismissed because you don't have any option towards industrial action. And in any other walk of life, if you make that commitment to a workplace, you'd be rewarded for it. Imagine you walk into a supermarket or a fast food chain and say, I can guarantee you I will never go on strike for as long as I work here. The employer will go, wow, this is my ideal employee. Let's give them a premium, or let's make sure that we really look after this person because this person is worth looking after. But unfortunately, the military have no control over their own pay and conditions. It goes to their government department. And the particular government department, I would argue, and I think that's the prevailing wisdom out there, is would have taken advantage of the fact that the troops can't strike and used every opportunity to take full advantage of that issue, basically. And as a result, over the years, everyone else's pay and conditions were improving. And the Defence Forces ones, they were improving slightly, but not at the same rate. And you noticed that the gap was widening every single year. So something had to be done. And reason being something had to be done is the military's capability was being completely eroded. It has been completely hollowed out. We had aircraft that were grounded in Balkans, couldn't take off. Helicopters couldn't even take off. We had 2 naval ships that were tied up. And we had troops overseas, basically, who were being absolutely burned out because they were going overseas nearly every year, every 2 years, and their spouses at home are going, we can't sustain this, we can't keep this going. Yes, we can keep it going for a few months, but we can't keep this going indefinitely. So a lot of the troops were asking themselves this very pertinent question. Okay, I want to be loyal to the Defence Force, I want to be loyal to the country, but I also need to be loyal to my family. And they were being forced to choose, is it the country or is it my family? And where do my priorities lie? And like any good family person, be they male or female, they chose correctly and said, my family comes number one. If my employer does not want me around or does not look after me, then I must make that mature decision myself. And that's why we are where we are, where the Defence Forces really, it's gone beyond the crisis now. It was a crisis maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and now it's a catastrophe. Completely solvable. I would be hopeful of a small improvement. I think there's finally a realisation that there is a genuine problem here, and just the engagements I've had up in Leinster House, they're all one-to-one engagements now with really, really influential people who have the authority to change these things. I think the message is finally getting across that it is a genuine issue, and most importantly, we now have the solutions. In the past, people would be aware of the problem but didn't know what buttons to push to solve them. But now there's no excuse now, and hopefully in the next week or two there's going to be some progress. It won't solve all the problems, but it'll be some tangible improvements that people can point to and go, okay, they're not just platitudes anymore, they're not just words. Because another part of the military culture is you don't judge someone by their words, you judge them by their actions. And if you want to communicate with somebody, you communicate with them by what you do rather than what you say. It's far more powerful. So I would be hopeful, and yeah, that's my story so far.